But if I turn off the LAN address and use the Wi-Fi, I can't get to it. And I think the same thing would apply to my laptop. I actually have an external address for the laptop when I'm on their network. And so I'm thinking that the problem is strictly with their network. We have a firewall in the rack, which is a sonic wall firewall. The guys with the management crew know how to configure that, but I think there's something wrong with that. So tomorrow they're going to bring in a router to bypass the sonic wall. That will eliminate the sonic wall from the problem. I'm not 100% that is a problem. It might be the local switch also. But we'll take that when we have it. I don't know who is coming to the data center tomorrow and when yet. I know Jabber's going to be there, but we've got three guys, Rick Lavelle, Chris Strowbridge, who works up in the Marlboro data center, and Derek Johnson. Those are the three guys from that team that are working with us. And I give them some kudos because, when we found out they were closing the data center, we didn't have an alternative, and we've been in that case before. The day we moved to Marlboro was I had the server in my car and got a call. It's, oh, Rick Zach has a space for us in his Marlboro lab. Anyway, that's the story. If it were a Linux issue with the server, we'd probably be able to serve it, fix it, but it's not. And John is all upset because he can't run all his scripts because he needs port 80 open. But I don't give a shit about John's scripts. I generally run the mailing lists, and postfix won't run because it can't get to the outside. And so that indicates to me the problem is outside of Linux. And if we can get SSH working from an external address, we should be fine. And hopefully tomorrow we'll get that solved.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go away and come back. My system notification helper is telling me over and over again to complete an update process that apparently happened in the background here, and it's going to make my presentation look really ugly to have that popping up again and again and again. So I'll go away and come back. Talk without me.
Well, anyway, thank you, Jerry, for all your ongoing effort.
No problem. I spent like 4 hours in that damn data center yesterday. So I'm surprised I even have hearing left.
Sounds like some of my days with Linux.
Yeah. And it's a nice data center. It's not really heavily populated, but it's on the same street where the old BCS office used to be. Where Bill used to know that, didn't he? It's on First Avenue in Waltham.
I know First Avenue, but I wasn't really much active with BCS.
First Avenue.
It's a good address.
Yeah, when you take a left from Winter Street onto First Avenue, it's a building on the immediate right. It's right in the corner of Winter Street and First Avenue. I think the problem was that data that data center was acquired very recently. So that's why it took. We were supposed to be out of Synoptech in Marlboro by January 31st, and that got delayed a little bit because they hadn't gotten the IP addresses yet from Center Square, which is the owner of the data center. That's really the issue we're having. Is I think it's the issue at the data center. It's either the sonic wall or outside of the sonic wall. Maybe I don't know if they have a switch. Uh, but I know that when I plugged in my laptop to the LAN, I got a 10 dot address, and then they assigned a one of our 5 external addresses, and I couldn't get outside.
Right. So
I couldn't.
they need to work out
Yep.
the VLAN and routing
Yes.
security
Yes.
for those
Exactly.
5 external addresses, and that's
Yep.
out of our control.
Yeah. That's really where the issue is, and Rick Lavelle is bringing a router in tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I think the problem, this is a problem they have to solve, because if they bring in more servers, they're going to have the same problem. Right now, I think we're the only.
They need a process, and
Yep.
it's sensible of them to shake out their process.
Yep.
With somebody on a freebie, and therefore
Yep.
has low SLA expectations.
Yep.
We can't complain about the service.
That's correct. Oh, Algott's back.
Hooray.
Yay, Algott.
Oh, are you guys still having a buzz, Robert?
Not hearing a buzz.
Okay.
I am not hearing any feedback or anything. We think
Probably
that
when I was on before, I might not have been fully connected to the earbuds.
No, what happened to me was I was hearing full scale feedback. I was getting a repeat of everything I said. And we think that may have had something to do with Arnie's setup. Maybe that's fixed now.
All right. I don't see Dick, but haven't heard from him. I would assume that he will join us if he can. He and Jill may be having some of the same technical issues that I did.
There it is.
That's me.
Okay, that's the buzz. That's the
Is
noise.
it? Is anybody here?
Hearing badly. Now it's stopped.
You think that was Jerry's system?
I don't think so.
No, it went away when somebody muted Arnie.
I didn't mute Arnie, but maybe Arnie did.
All right. In any case, this meeting is a strange start to the day, but maybe we'll get through it. You can hope, of course. Did I miss anything of importance that
We just talked about the data center.
Very good. Okay. And there's nothing this meeting can solve about that, I'm sure. So I
Mhm.
suppose what I'll do is to share my screen for the agenda.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go with a window and Firefox. And
Yeah.
you should see it.
By the way, I did meet Dennis Payne's father last Friday. He belongs to the same group I meet at on Fridays. And he came over to me, mentioned that he was Dennis's father.
Cool. Did he approve of Dennis's FOSS associations?
Yes.
All right. As long as he's a supportive parent, we can appreciate that. Excellent. All right. Is my screen looking reasonably good for
Yes.
everybody's
fine.
view?
Yep.
All right. Dick Miller gave us the note that LibreOffice Update 25.2 was released today. As our FOSS news begins, we meet as NatickFOSS user group once a month. Most is the first Thursday, being February 6th. This is that first Thursday. And we are online for those who are watching recorded later using free open source software, including a program that is very functional most of the time called Jitsi Meet. And when our website is working, you can find out more about both of those. Right now, our website is in transition. So we're doing our best to keep on going. Whether it comes up today or tomorrow will be determined. Okay. If Dick arrives, we'll add that information that he's ready to provide about LibreOffice's most recent release. But there's a nice Linux experiment video that really gives a good overview of how important changes happened for Linux in 2024. I recommend that everybody takes a look at that. I won't play it through the Jitsi Meet because that's an overload of one video over another. But it was full of good notes about how a small increase to the total percentage represents a significant increase over the percentage Linux had before 2024. And the Linux experiment videos are very instructive every time I've looked at them. So I think we can recommend that on a regular basis if you are looking for technical level and very useful Linux general information, open source. The next one is about an academic journal, the Journal of Open Source Software, and is probably more for those people who are looking for university level descriptions of how to write and account for using open source software in an academic setting or for research purposes. And that might not be for everybody, but it's worth knowing that that journal exists. So we've put the link in for you to look at. Somebody have a comment about that? Oh, it's Jill. I heard her voice in the background there joining us. Hi, Jill. We're just beginning the meat of the agenda, and I have passed over Dick's LibreOffice entry. We'll come back to it later when you guys are set up. How's that?
Okay, thanks.
All right. Open source has a couple of definitions about it, and Mark Zuckerberg appears to want to change the scope of open source definitions to include things that are not observable by the general public, not open enough for the open source initiative to classify his wish as a valid open source license. He wants to structure it so that he can have elements of some of his products be called open source without having them be open for analysis by other professionals and users alike. And I hope we won't find that his plan goes through, because that is not the way open source ought to be described by anybody. And I recommend reading this article about his intentions. They sounded good, open, but doesn't work. Okay. Apparently there's also some restrictions that have been put in place for the kernel of Linux to not accept submissions for the kernel itself from certain countries. And that led to some Russian programmers who had been contributors being asked to step back and have patience while this issue gets discussed further. And here is a list in this link of those countries that are non-compliant with the OFAC sanctions restricting or prohibiting transactions with certain countries, entities, and individuals. And this article talks about that issue along with listing the countries we're not allowed to accept help from. We get our information from a lot of sources that many of us come across, the many of us being people who want to contribute to this agenda. If you watching us or do this presentation want to contribute something when our website is available, please check it out and find out how to join our group. You don't have to live in Central or Metro West Boston area to do so. That's our location. We are broad in our interests, and if you have some good contribution to make, please consider joining us. Sign up for the Discuss mailing list when that's available, and add your recommendations for things for us to discuss. Any comments from the gallery here? Okay. Dick, shall we go back to you about the LibreOffice being brand new today?
Here we go. Can you hear me?
Wait a minute. Do it again.
Just saying.
Sorry about the feedback.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
As you could tell from the feedback, yes.
Oh, uh-oh.
No, we're done. We got feedback killed.
Turn off your microphone and turn on mine. Technical problems. Just a moment.
I think my new hearing aids are not well. I'll switch.
His hearing aids might be interfering.
Why doesn't someone else go ahead and then I'll get it working?
All right, we'll move on then. Thank you.
Did you get that?
We did. Thank you.
Albert?
Yes? Dick is going to come back in a minute. Is that correct? I'm not hearing a response from Jill, so maybe she has no sound going her way.
Yeah, she had to turn her sound off when it was feeding back through his mic.
All right. So before we get back to that, hopefully, the next item isn't actually about free open source software, but it is related, because one of the things that prevents something from being free and open source is that it has been locked down by copyright and or patent. And the MP3 audio format for a long time has been under that kind of restriction, which meant you needed a license to put that to work with your software. Recently, the MP3 format has exited those restrictions. Its patent or copyright was not renewed and is possible to incorporate into software without restriction. That's not open source now, it's just out of copyright. So it becomes more or less public domain, which is something slightly different from open source. In any case, this interesting article suggests, ho hum, maybe that's not such a big deal, because except for those of us like me who actually keep copies of my music in MP3 format on my hard drive, almost everybody in the modern internet connected world uses streaming services to get their audio, podcasts, music, videos with sound and so forth. So maybe the MP3 format doesn't matter. Well, for me, it does. So I thought it was interesting enough to mention that in that way. Anybody else have FOSS news that we don't have on the agenda?
Hi,
Well,
Albert. We're having trouble. Dick just got new hearing aids, and they seem to be prioritizing. So we're still working on our connections here.
Okay, we'll be patient and come back to you at a little later in the meeting. No
Well,
problem.
that sounds like a reasonable priority.
That's right. Okay, Bob had a request.
yeah, regarding MP3, one of its significances is that it either was or is one of the bases for MP4, which is still a very active video format.
Yep, I just downloaded one yesterday.
Very interesting.
So with MP3 becoming more available, it doesn't really affect MP4 yet because that's still locked down.
True. Although I suppose if you had a non-proprietary video from which you extracted the audio, you could theoretically use that with your MP3 version and play it without any restrictions.
Yeah, is what we're talking about here expiration of the implementation patent?
Yeah.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, that doesn't last terribly long, although in computer terms, 17 years is forever.
Mm-hmm. And that was
Um,
one of the points that the article made. It was said that MP3 has been surpassed by better quality formatting for audio, and that's probably true. But I, with my ears being as old as they are, having some hearing aids, as a matter of fact, the audio format is good enough for me to enjoy quite a bit of music that I keep right handy on my laptop hard drive, and I can plug in my audio program anytime I want to listen. And I don't have to
And
go to
as
a streaming service.
and as fast as storage media are getting bigger, smaller, cheaper, you don't need better compression um, for the same audio quality either. MP3 remains quite acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. Our FOSS history is empty. Does anybody have a FOSS history they'd like to mention to the group? Sometimes that happens, that we don't have topic contents. I don't remove them from the agenda because occasionally a blank topic like that will be mentioned with some content during a meeting, and I don't want to forget that it's there.
Ed had one that he posted on Discuss.
As a history?
Well, he posted that it was Vivaldi's 10th anniversary last week.
That's a good point. Vivaldi being a browser and other services similar to the Mozilla system, if I understand correctly, but doing it outside the Mozilla umbrella for sure. It's like a fork, as we call software that gets picked up and modified and taken a different direction. Yes, Ed, go right ahead.
Okay, Vivaldi is not a fork of Mozilla, not even close.
No.
It's the browser part of it is based on Chromium. It has built-in email client with calendar and news feeds. And there's other things that I haven't even looked at yet that's part of this. It's not 100% open source because because of the user interface, but the code is freely auditable.
Auditable code is the primary thing in open source software, even if the code is not something that you can modify. Being able to look at it at least gives you the chance to complain about specifics to the actual development team. And that's important.
Open and some subset of the four freedoms is better than nothing. Did you say, Ed, that it has Usenet or NetNews feed reading?
I believe no, not Usenet. I believe it's the RSS feeds.
RSS is good. I'd like to find a NNTP reader again, because there's mailing lists that I just do not want to subscribe to. As email, that would be better on via the news interface.
At some point, Bill, would you consider giving us a brief presentation on the NNT?
Only if I find something usable.
Okay. And that, I believe, is an older style of interactive delivery. Is that correct? Not an RSS feed.
It's older than RSS. It dates to the very early 80s, if not late 70s even. So before the internet entered, it was working on a store and forward basis, dialing dial-ups, and it worked. And it was ported to the internet backbone when that was available for not just academic and contractor usage. And it was the mainstay of a lot of online culture for more than a decade, 80s and 90s, before the World Wide Web crushed everything.
Is it related to what's it? BBS's bulletin board systems?
Bulletin board systems joined in. It was effectively federating the discussion boards on bulletin boards under net-wide hierarchy of topics. In a sense, it was the original Fediverse.
Neat. Huh. There's all sorts of good stuff out there. Some of it is with us today and in regular use. Other parts seem to have slid away into disuse, but they don't necessarily disappear. And that's why we want this topic in our discussion every month, because something comes up that we don't remember too well, and it's good to remember. Okay. Hot software. We'll skip that first one, list of default software installed with Mint, until Dick comes around with his technology of the moment. Shall we then? Oh, yes. Do I hear you, Dick? Well, all I'm getting is a mild feedback from somewhere. Okay. I think it might be Dick's microphone not muted. So I'll do that. Okay. The next thing on my agenda, since it's on my screen, that's the way I get to call it, my agenda. It's actually our agenda. We have a list, making embossed text with Inkscape, and that's my demo for this month. What I'd like to do is to unshare this and share my entire screen, which will do one of those funny mosaics for a moment, so that I can bring up my Firefox screen, my Inkscape screen, where the demo will happen. Entire screen. Right. And I'm seeing my current new document. Is everybody else seeing that?
Yeah, it looks like a new document.
Very good then.
Yep.
I'm going to go to here and open the actual document that we need. In Articles, NatickFOSS, Emboss, we want the official template that I'm going to work from, which is partially set up with background information. And I'm going to turn on one other feature. Something called screen key. So that when I press a keyboard combination, you will not have to hear me say it and wonder what it was. You'll also be able to see it. Let me verify that that is working. Show the keys. Yes. Screen key is a nice utility for making presentations, I have found. All right, this screen is the main screen of Inkscape with lots of features, some of which I will talk about today, some of which I've mentioned before in presentations, and some of which I won't mention at all because we're focused on something of a single topic, making a set of embossed text. Now, text by itself, I just turned the caps on, does not happen. I typed emboss and you saw that. So there we go. I can also, up at the top here, change from being normal to bold, which actually works nicely in the case of our process. And what I want to do is to give us a background against which everything will look reasonable. I want it to be a neutral 50% gray, which I choose by going over here to the lower left corner of my screen and making sure that I put a dot in the center of the 50% gray as opposed to black, as opposed to white, and as opposed to no color at all. I want a neutral background. Now, the word emboss, I want to put on this and then manipulate in a series of steps so that it looks like not just a boring black text, but as if it were standing out and having a piece of shadow attached to it that looks sensible. Now, one of the things that will make it clearer is if you understand layers and objects. And over here on the right-hand side of my screen is a set of pop-ups that each have their own tab, one of which is the Align and Distribute. One is Fill and Stroke for the color of the object and the outline around it. The one I went to at first, which is the layer and its component pieces. I have three sets of information: a rectangle, the one that you just saw me make, a text number 5, which when I click on this item, this object, puts a little outline of dotted lines around the word emboss. That's my 5th text object because I've done work with this template before. And then there's these 3 percentages over on the left side of my page that tell that I want to use 80%, 50%, and 20% for the 3 shades to offer us our emboss lettering. Okay, I also have a 4th, which is the export, so that I can go to giving that result as a PNG file for sharing on the web. But we won't be doing that in this particular case. Note that when I hover over a particular tab of this pop-up dialog, it tells us not only what it is, dialog of aligning and distributing, but also that I can invoke that by doing the Shift the Control and the A key as a group. I could also do other ways of getting that, but that's the easiest way. Using the hotkeys is something you have to get used to in programs like Inkscape. And when you use any of these dialogues or techniques, you will gradually become so well attuned to the necessities, you'll do the Shift, Control, and A automatically to get the align and distribute ready for you. Okay, first step, I want to go to the text. When I click on the object of the text, it becomes outlined as before, and I want to duplicate that, and I'm going to do that by doing Control D. Now, very quickly, you'll notice nothing appeared to change, but I have two copies instead of just one, and I'm dragging I'm dragging the copy, not the original, onto my background. Now, I do not want it to be neutral gray because you can't see it if it's neutral gray. The one I want to use is a 80% gray, which will give us the dark part of our shadow. And I can put that right where it is for the moment. I don't need to fiddle with it. I now want to duplicate again. I can duplicate the original if I want, or I can duplicate this one. And in this particular set of techniques, duplicating the one I made 80% will work just fine. I do Control D again. Then I want to make that one 20% gray. And this whole stripe along here is percentages down to the lowest of 2.5 all the way up to the highest of 90%. I found that for this demo, a 20% gray is very good. And as before, the duplicate copy sits right on top of the original. But if I use the up arrow key a couple of times and the left arrow key a couple of times, I create what looks like a shadow. It's manually created because I've got the lighter colored against the darker colored, but it still doesn't look embossed. So I do this one more time, select the top object, duplicate it, and go back, and now finally create the copy that is the shade of the background, move down once and over once. And if I take away the outline and you squint just a little bit, you should be able to see what looks like a light shining from the top left. And if I import from the same folder, I need to do the light source. And we imagine that that light source is shining from about 45-degree angle top left. There you get your word emboss looking embossed. One other thing that's important to note is that there are 3 copies of the lettering. And if you want to move them around as a group to use the align and distribute, for example, you do not want to align and distribute them individually. If you do that, all of a sudden, nothing's there. useless. I'm Control Zing to get my mistaken alignment taken away. And I'm going to group these by doing Control G before I try to align them as a group to the last selected object, which was my box. And now if I do those two things, it's perfectly aligned in the center of the box. Any questions so far? No? Okay, I've
Looks
got.
good, Alco.
Mhm.
Looks good.
All right. Now, clearly, you will see it much better on your own screen using your own copy of Inkscape, because it'll be as clear an image as possible and not traveling through the Ethernet, internet, and Wi-Fi channels. But if I go back, I'd like to do the next step to click away from something so I can move that up out of the way. I want to repeat the same steps, but for the purpose of doing the opposite. I want to take my original, duplicate it, this time making it white, duplicate it again, this time making it 80%, take that up twice and over twice, duplicate it another time, make it 50%, and take it down and over. Now, this one's a little harder to see, but if you look really careful and squint just a hair, you'll notice that the light source is being caught in the lower corners, apparently, of the lettering.
which
And that
makes it
this look
debossing as opposed to
debossing.
embossing.
Exactly. The other word for deboss is engraved. So if you talk about,
No,
well,
no, there are different skills.
but when you think of engraving, you mean depth as opposed to raised. And
Yes,
some
but it's
people
done. But
confuse
it is
those.
but it is done by graving with a sharp stick as
True.
opposed to thumping with a preformed shape as emboss and deboss does.
Got it. Now, the problem with doing these techniques is that once you use a set of letters, you're stuck with them. So I want to take a moment to do a third version. It's going to be very much the same with one important difference. That is that I'm not going to duplicate. I'm going to do something called clone. Now, the object menu offers us a lot of things, but clone is an edit. You might have thought that you could do duplicates and clones in the same location, but you got to go to edit to get those choices. I'm going to make a clone, and it works the same way it did before, except that this and this are tied together. So if I say DBoss, not only does my original change, so does my clone. And that is going to make it possible for us to have a nice, repeatable, and quicker way to do embossed or debossed text. So this one, I'm going to change to my 20%. I made a mistake on the middle one. I don't want white. I want 20% for it. I do not want to duplicate this one. I want to take my original again, and I want it to become a clone, which, if I look carefully and do the keyboard work, is Alt D, not just Control D, but Alt D. It's very similar. You can get confused for a long time if you're careless. Now, how do I get up and down in this group? That's the next question. If I click on the top one, it goes to the top one. How do I get to the second layer? I hold the Alt key and click. And if you look, I've gone over to the second layer. I'm on the 80% color instead of the 20% gray color. So I can move that one up and left a little more. The result is a little more depth if you fiddle. And once again, grouping them together, which is Control G, I can then make sure that they go where I want them with the alignment tools, centered more or less. And let me once again emphasize the benefits of this. If I wanted to say DBoss, or I wanted to make a greeting card, let me move these out of the way, that was for people to look at on screen as if it were a name badge. I can double click on the original cloned text and write, oop. And what you'll notice is I didn't have to go through all the work of doing each set of letters and the duplicating or the cloning or any of that. They stay grouped. I can now take this one and further center it. I can double click here and write Jerry or any other person's name. And if I have centered it before, during the typing of it, if it's set up centered originally, it will stay centered on the document as well. I think that was a step I probably missed before. Let me see if it will do. Yep. Once I have set it up to be centered text, and that is done up here with this pull down option menu, you need to center your original text before you go through the process here. Otherwise, if it's left justified or right justified, it'll stay those ways. I could have other kinds of standard text already put on this and go through and make card after card after card that looked like they were debossed in this particular case, or embossed if I went the other way. Now, let me just call your attention to something that is not yet public. If I now go to this screen and open a new tab and open a file from my documents. all of these instructions will be available in a shortened form, but I thought I might point to this as an example of how neat you can be if you're recycling glass. The rest of this could be set up as duplication. This was done with the cloning process, so all I had to do was set it up to be glass in the first place, cans in the second, and paper in the third, without having to rewrite everything. And I will point out also that this is based on a forum article from the inkscape.org forum, where two users, Bryn and Zav, I presume is the pronunciation, they and all sorts of other people offer these kinds of tricks and tips that teach the rest of us how to do neat stuff. Okay. Any questions?
I just want to mention that our next BLU meeting is going to also feature Inkscape with Martin Owens is going to be presenting.
And I recommend getting involved and listening to that presentation, because he is a true, I won't say genius, but pretty close to it when it comes to being a developer for Inkscape. I'm just a user. He's a developer and understands the insides of both the organization that's developing Inkscape as well as the program itself.
Yeah, and this will be February 19th.
I look forward to that. Thank you, Jerry. Anybody else have comments?
I'll just post this in the comments here.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing because I am sharing my whole screen at the moment. And then I would like to start sharing again if it's still my turn. Otherwise, are we ready for Dick and Jill to deal with the items that I passed over?
Dick's still not coming. Wait a minute. Dick's still not coming through on his microphone, so we're going to use mine.
That works. That works.
Am I loud enough? Does that work? Good.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry about that. I've had no hearing aids for a little over 1 day, and I can't tell you how wonderful they are linked to the computer, and they don't weigh anything, and they work like a headset. I think I have more work to do for using them with this. It's a disaster. So we'll see what does work. I'm kind of off balance now, but let's see what I can do. First of all,
Oh, Alga, can you put up your what do you call it? The agenda screen? Yes, he's going to.
good idea. And let's see about the first one. Is it live?
No, that's not going to be live from here.
Can that be opened by you, Algot? That first line? Good. We've got new stuff out there today, and it's smack in the middle where a lot of people live. LibreOffice is built upon OpenOffice, and they're attempting to turn Microsoft Office tools into an open source solution that's as good or better, costs no money, and better yet, isn't tracking people and doing other sneaky things. It's been very popular. This is a major step forward, a big upgrade, not just an update. And there's several articles out there today. I don't think it was announced as of last night, although the betas have been around for quite a while. So it's up. It says it's ready for use. I've downloaded my copy, but if I'm as busy as I was today, I'll wait a week. The reason is you can download it from a central source at LibreOffice, but I'm running on Linux Mint. They're not listing this version yet. I think they will by tomorrow. Then a lot of other Linux Mint users are going to start using it, and they'll add some further touches of refinement and debugging as a lot more users get aboard. I can afford to wait a week, so I think I will. If you just want to take the trip or get aboard quickly, you can play with the release that's available now. I expect it will be quite good. But now the individual Linux distros and versions will be testing against it in much higher number than they've had up to today. So you can play with it, lean on it, or wait till enough other people have leaned on it. It's your choice. It looks wonderful. You can read all about it. And of course, you can try it on the side and keep your other version available. So a lot of ways to go. In round numbers, it's totally recoded Microsoft Office and then built upon it. People suggest improvements, and a bunch of them got in on this round, and you can read about that right in there. And let me see, one of these documents leads to a few others. Doesn't matter. When you click on the address we'll give you for it, which is in fact the one you're on right now, Algot. This is one version of the story. You'll find a few other versions available through it, and a lot of comments started to come in. People are already quite happy. So I think you can afford to try it, but if you just don't want to until other people have fine-tuned it for your version of Linux, wait a week. And you can read about it meanwhile. Also, LibreOffice has some very good user guides. The user guides come for each section of it, and they're all out there for the most recent prior version. But only one is out there as of an hour ago for this new version, 25.2. And it's for Writer, the portion of it that is like Writer in the Windows version. That is already out. You can lean in and start enjoying it. And you can still get almost everything you need from the earlier versions that are up right alongside it on a link I provided. The link I provided, when you go to the recommended place for all our Miller microcomputer services, information on computers, programming, Linux, and more related to it. When you get to that first line, it turns out that for today, this is the first article you'll find. Newest one's up top. And there we go. And it's from the group that runs LibreOffice. This is their library system, if you will. And right under it on the first line, not for the title of the article, but for the article, is a little comment, my short form, Algot. And the LibreOffice in there is another clickable link, and it will take you to the official information, which is here. So you have several versions of the info. This one will easily take you to the manuals, for example. It's easy to steer around once you start. So try it that way. The first couple of paragraphs on the screen right now for it are a really good intro to why it's a very nice tool to have for free. And it runs on just about everything you can imagine. Free open source software. So highly recommended. Maybe I or someone else will give you a demo next month. We shall see. I'm looking forward to playing with it.
I have a question since I haven't had time yet to look at the article. Did they also update LibreOffice Base, the database?
Yes. And you'll find that in my discussion. I've got a short form discussion of it that I posted. And that's what the link will go to first. And I gave a short analysis of what those changes are. You'll have about 6 things you can look at as you click on the one link and then follow it through. So enjoy. They also point out that they have 2 versions of it. They've coded it for the newest, best open source underlying pieces, but they've also gone back and recoded it for the much bulkier and more awkward and more prone to accident Microsoft underlying version. You want the version for your version of Linux, if that's the way you're using it. Take advantage of the better tools and the ones that aren't tracking you. Read all about it. It's up there. Any questions? Thank you.
Algart, you're muted.
Technology. Should you, Dick, go ahead and give us the list of default software installed with Mint? Just a comment about it?
We think it's ready for looking at, but we don't yet have it smooth. We've had troubles going back and forth with this website, and everyone's doing something else all the time. So we think we've got something up there now. We'll have more up there as soon as we all have time to smooth it out and enjoy.
Okay.
And I'll take feedback where things can be improved.
You're also listed here for a whole series on Photox.
Yes. I think most of that is staying up in the regular Photox location, and we'll give a demo. It won't be today. I'm feeling kind of hot and headachy, and I'm glad that doesn't transmit well over the connection.
Sounds like a plan. I'll move these onto the March agenda. Sound like a good deal?
Thank you.
You bet. We have plenty to talk about in every meeting, and some meetings we have way too much. I hear a hand.
Yeah, just one thing about listing the default software with Mint. The article showed several ways of listing the software, and it was kind of interesting what kinds of lists you get when you use different commands and different tools. and it's a very complete list. There's also a graphical way of listing software using Synaptic, the repository manager for most of our Debian editions and the Ubuntu derived editions. And apt and Synaptic also have ways of making a record of your installed software, and they also have ways of exporting a list in case you want to move your move or repair perhaps your Linux. You can get your software back in just one stroke.
Sounds like a good demo to give at some future meeting once a person is prepared to do it.
It's very easy to show, but if we wanted to take a little time out, I could show you where it is in Synaptic.
Sure, why not?
Okay, I also have. Yeah, you can unshare, and when we're ready, I can share, and I can show you what happened when I did some things.
It's all yours.
So let me try my entire screen, and let me see if I can do that and get out of my email and my other browser. And here's what I found. I did some package listing, and I think I have, yeah, there are commands with sudo depackage L. And what I ended up with was, down at the bottom, some 98,200 lines. Those would be every component, not just the major software titles that I would see in my Mint. If I did this and went through all applications, I'd see a lot fewer. So the other thing that I did was the next thing that was in the article was apt list. And that shows what aptitude the package manager is listing. By the way, this is Linux Mint Debian edition. And I found that there were 4,146 packages. Those are the major software packages. They're recognizable titles like Zoom and Z Library. And farther up, we have LibreOffice, various components. It includes some of the different components and some of the system packages as well. In fact, it has all your system packages. And then there was a listing that was done. I believe this is also an apt list, but this was exported from Synaptic. And this is listing installed local, installed. There may be an installed manual or installed automatic. And I can show you in the interface what that all means just in one moment after I show. I think there might be something more interesting in some of these other packages lists. All right. This is what GitHub lists as the basic packages that Linux Mint Debian edition contains right off the download. And this is from a website. They listed in the article a GitHub website where they have all this stuff listed. And there's a link in there. So these are called manifests, and they're a little different from the actual packages. But there's 2,117 of those. So I have a few hundred that I installed on my own. And then we have apt list, which is a command. And apt list is a different format. And you can see the version numbers of what you've got. This is in the terminal. And that's 4,145 lines, which matches very well with my other list. I think there's some things about file system packages Let me see if that's of any interest. Not particularly. It's very similar. Okay, let's see the graphical interface. I will call up Synaptic. Type in the first 3 letters, hit it. I do not like the way the authentication, they changed something in a recent update of the Mint Package Manager. There used to be some nicer looking authentication pop-ups, and it's just so jarring that this is so much starker and less polished than the rest of the Cinnamon interface. But anyway, I think it's a GNOME thing they put into Cinnamon. But anyway, this obviously requires root access. That's why you need your password. It will list all installed local, which is a different kind of install, manual install, which is still different. You'll sometimes see something that's new in the repository, and that shows what they added since last you updated. And there's not installed. What you're interested in is installed, and those will have the green box. And many of these are Debian native packages. And what you would do is you would save markings as. And if you do that, you want to save the full state. I'm not going to actually save them because I already did this recently. But saving the full state means you get all the markings. If you don't save the full state, you will get only the changes since last time, which may be very few or none at all. And so that's the graphical way to do this. And I think I can stop sharing and see if I can call up my browser again. We're back.
Oh, that was a very quick demo. Thank you. I expected to need a month or more to prepare for it, but you were right there on the spot.
No, it's something I do so frequently in my backups because I want my software list backed up. I'm going to download fresh copies if I have to do anything, but I want to know what I need to download that isn't fresh off the install, that isn't included, even though Mint is a very all-inclusive distro.
What I've been doing on Debian and Ubuntu is doing depackage list, which is very raw level, but lists everything that Debian thinks is in use. And that's, I do that before upgrading to have a record of what gets lost in the upgrade.
Yeah. Synaptic will also do that, but there are some things it won't list. For example, if you have any app images, or if you have the Flatpak, then you have to do something called Flatpak list.
Yeah, the push to these other packaging systems proliferating, such that there's no longer one source of truth, is annoying.
Yeah, you have to maintain several lists. And with Ubuntu, of course, it's Snap.
Okay, thank you, Bob. And all those who have comments at the same time, appreciate them.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, let me reshare so we know where we're going. Hot hardware, pros and cons of owning a Chromebook. This was from How to Geek. Again, Ed and Bob were the source of this. This is an article from How to Geek, but I expect that those who are the best users of Chromebooks might be the ones who'll give us comments about it. Oh, maybe not. Okay, the article itself is pretty complete. How To Geek is one of those places that does a good job of mostly showing what they're talking about and gives a limited set of advertising activities surrounding it. But as you will see in some of our listings, there is a little icon that pops up on the website version of the agendas that says, watch out, this is a site that has too much advertising and not enough just simple content. You have to bounce over all the other stuff to get to it. This is one of the better sites for readability. I heard someone's mic in the background. Does somebody have a comment to make?
Well, I can report that Chromebooks, as long as you are only doing very simple things and you don't mind how locked down they tend to be, they are very good for, like, when you're traveling. They are very good for relatively simple tasks like email, and apps tend, the whole idea of an app is that it just does one thing and does it well. And if you get used to using an app for a particular task, that's really good. But if you want a more general purpose program, like, for example, LibreOffice, you aren't going to find that on a Chromebook natively. You will find some apps that are kind of like it, but kind of like some of its components, but it won't have all the power. And so my alternative to it was always to put Linux alongside of Chrome OS on a capable Chromebook. It has to have certain minimum requirements, and so the price will be higher. But eventually Chromebooks go out of, they don't get updates anymore because that's the way Google makes them. And Google decides, well, you have to upgrade every few years. I think it's 5 to 7 years now, just like you would on a long-term stability release of Linux, except you have to get new hardware for a Chromebook. Or you have to do what I did, was you actually physically take the back off of it, take out a physical write protect screw, and then put everything back together, maybe put a new battery in it. And then if it survives that, you can change the ROM over to an open source BIOS and then put actual Linux onto the Chromebook. Mine is an Intel-based Chromebook, and it's still going pretty strong with that new battery and its new operating system, which is much more flexible and much more useful when I don't have an internet connection.
That's good advice and information. Thank you very much, Bob. All right. Fake storage drives, do we want to put that off till next time as well, Dick?
Am I on?
Yes.
Nice change. Okay. I think we can at least mention it, and the fake storage drives are out there in big numbers. Sometimes they're a storage drive that's tiny, but advertises itself as large, both in print and inside the drive in the software. And you can pay hundreds of dollars for undersized ones that you don't find out about till later. So how do you find them? How do you avoid them? Get your money back while you can, and tell them from the good ones. So there are tools for doing this, and there are better tools proposed for doing this, and I've been tracking that in a few places. I can say more next month, but don't pay for the wrong one without getting a money-back guarantee if it turns out to be small. Meanwhile, you can just take the biggest file you can find and see how many times you can put it on before the flash drive or whatever tells you it's full. And the automatic tests are more pleasant. So that's what it's about.
Ubuntu.iso is a good one. It's big.
Just keep putting it on. That's the concept. I might have.
My safety is not to
I
order.
don't dare demo anything today.
My safety is not to order from weasels in China, but drive over to Micro Center whenever they have what I want.
For those in the Metro West Boston area, Micro Center is a tremendous resource. It's one of those places that other areas used to have in abundance, with many more computer stores out there in the past, and now we're down to just a few.
And they're expanding. They've invaded California since Fry's collapsed.
That's good news for those in California.
Or those who hope to vacation there.
That's good.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to deal with Micro Center for upgrading the Toshiba that I inherited from my nephew. He got a new gaming laptop. But it's going to be like my Chromebook because it's thinner and lighter weight than my preferred ThinkPad. So it'll fit in my gear backpack better. And so I want to get the replacement power supply and the replacement. Actually, the battery seems to be good on it on a used unit, which is amazing. But get the larger size disc and the power pack.
Yeah, I have found that if they're cared for properly, the Toshiba laptops have really good batteries. That's one of the few good things I'll say about them.
That's a pleasant surprise. This one seems to be reasonably nice, and it will fit the backpack that I keep all of my video and cable adapters and can stuff a couple of cameras into too. It's a photographer's backpack.
Yeah.
And my deliciously large ThinkPad won't fit.
Yeah. I carry around my Chromebook, which is now a Linux book, for much the same reason.
All right.
As long as you get your laptops used, refurb, or free, there's no ridiculous number of them to have.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say about getting cheaper flash drives or SSDs, flash drives or camera cards, I would say, is I'm willing to deal with relatively no name as long as I don't pay too much for it. So maybe once in a while it might turn out not to be so great. But if I'm careful where I get them and careful about reading the specs, I have a pretty good idea what I'm getting.
Yeah, if you save enough money getting burned one time and even three, you're still saving money.
Yeah.
As long as you detect it non-catastrophically.
Yeah. I only use flash drives and SD cards for transferring data. Or if I had a camera, I might be using an SD card in there, and I use one in my phone.
Speaking of flash drives, news to me, it apparently was publicly known 6 months ago. There's a specific model of the Samsung M2 Evo NAND drives that had bad firmware.
Yes.
And if you update the firmware before it bricks on you, it will repair. But if you don't, it will eventually brick to read-only mode. At least it's read-only.
Yeah.
And I checked, and my Micro Center receipt in my email says that I got a different model, so I'm probably okay.
Yeah.
But
Well, good. Yeah, what also showed up rather recently was that Samsung, even on some of their premier drive SSDs, had been using inferior controllers. And there are ways of finding out about that. There are tools that can detect that. And if you have one of these bad controllers, there's not much you can do about that. But the bad firmware, all you need to do is get Samsung Magician. And Samsung themselves did come up with updates.
yeah, which
Okay.
would mean moving it over into the DOS unit to do the update, I think.
Yeah,
Magician probably isn't going to run under Wine.
Magician likes to run under Windows, unfortunately.
Yeah. But the good news is the one on my Linux box is an 870, not a 980. So
I ought to check and see which ones I've got. I've got a 900 series, but I think it's a 960.
All right.
I've got a 9 series, but it's the SATA as opposed to the M2.
Yeah, mine's NVMe.
Yeah, I've got an NVMe in one unit and a SATA in the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I have one of those hanging around too.
Okay. Ed had a comment.
Yes, regarding Micro Center, if you're hearing something in the background, it's the CPU cooling fan in the laptop. If you're going to drive to Micro Center, I would suggest that you leave your residence early enough so that you arrive there minimum of 1 hour before the store opens. They open at 10 o'clock. The issue there is the parking lot is shared with a Trader Joe's. And in the past, I've left Salem and got to Cambridge just before the store opened at 10 o'clock, and the parking lot was completely full. And probably 90% of the cars, the customers were in Trader Joe's.
I've not had a problem there finding parking ever. I've gone a wide variety of times on a wide variety of days.
Yeah, I go later in the day, and it doesn't seem to be as much of a problem as long as you avoid the evening rush. And not Saturdays. Saturdays, it's bad.
Yeah,
and not when MIT is having move-in because everybody's upgrading.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, the times that I experienced this, the full parking lot in the morning were on Saturdays, but this was, I think, at least 10 years ago. And,
Well,
after experiencing that, I've been just buying my stuff through the website.
Life is a little less hectic today than 10 years ago. Thanks to everybody else doing Amazon and the despicable Chinese AliExpress things. And in general, you don't want to be there at rush hour, but I usually am.
Yeah.
If I'm going after a doctor's appointment in Kenmore. But the other thing is you can check on Google Maps and see if the Trader Joe's is busier than usual or if the Micro Center is busier than usual.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you can come to this meeting at 3 o'clock, you're a gentleman of leisure and can go there at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, the parking lot has been redesigned recently, also much more recently than 10 years ago.
And the other thing is to know is the Starbucks is gone.
Yeah.
That Starbucks was trying to unionize, so they closed it. The
Yeah,
bastards.
even if they hadn't, Starbucks isn't as trendy as it used to be.
No, it isn't. But there was a place where I could leave the wife while I went shopping.
Yeah, I get
Free two days in the past couple of weeks, once on a Thursday and once on a Tuesday. There was plenty of parking at 3 p.m.
Yeah, I mean it's and if you ever find the parking lot full and you're only going to Micro Center, go around the block.
Yeah.
And come in at the back corner right by the Shell station.
Hmm.
There's 4 parking spaces along the back driveway between the Shell station and the main entrance. They're almost never used.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That would never be seen by somebody coming in from Metro West unless you went around the block past the Shell station.
I've done that several times before.
Or if it's
Because I'm
something,
frequently coming from the Shell station, I'll come in that side driveway, even if I'm not parking there.
yeah. Or if it's something small, I'll just ride my bike.
Well, that's a different optimization.
I live near some of the bike paths.
If you have protected bike paths, that's wonderful.
Okay, that was a nice discussion. And we might finalize that by saying Linux is obviously well supported, or this group wouldn't be talking about Micro Center at all. All right.
Right. Yes, they're not allergic to Linux.
They
True.
are or not?
Not.
Not. Good.
Agreed.
How about we leave the FOSS tools for next month as well on the hot internet listing here. Join Fediverse wikis just for those who are interested in promoting joining up Mastodon or any of the other services that are part of that service. The Fediverse, meaning distributed and decentralized. Excuse me. Distributed is what we want to say. Decentralized merely means it's probably got fewer cores. That's something not all of us are interested in, but those who are might want to have promotional stickers to hand out, and maybe we'll have some of those available when we get together for our FOSS at SOS, which has been approved. We have been accepted. So we'll be getting more information on that in the next few weeks. Bridgie Fed is a cross connection, if you are interested in it, between Mastodon and Blue Sky. Blue Sky is the offspring of Twitter, more or less, and somewhat less is good, but too much of the more is also there. It is a relatively centralized system, even though it is nominally decentralized. If that's what interests you, I would recommend that you read this very long, very thorough, very technically detailed, but readable article by Christine Lemmer-Weber, who is one of the developers and documenters of the ActivityPub protocol that underlies the Mastodon network that some of us are part of. The Fediverse is the larger name. It's not Mastodon altogether, but it is, if you are interested, worth the read. Okay. Bill, you had some comments about the distributed social media trends of the Fediverse?
I don't remember.
Okay. Next month you may remember perfectly, so we'll put it off. We're
Particularly
not,
if you remind me ahead of time.
sounds like a plan. I'm sure that this will be available as the website comes back online. This item and a few others that we have skipped over will be reposted for next month's agenda as potential topics anyway. So the Contra Chrome comic was something I came across, which is against just being snookered by the Chrome browser world, which is part of all the Android's operating system tools. It's a Google product, and this man, Scott McCloud, is a cartoonist, and he, back in 2008, created a Google comic book that was something he was proud of having made, but this is one of those things. We're entering a period of time when Chrome has changed so much. He wants to give an update, which is tongue-in-cheek for saying how bad things have become. So if you want to go through this comic, you can do so by clicking these single links, and there is a way to download the entire thing. I haven't done that yet, and I haven't read the entire comic, but it's a nice presentation from what I saw. Okay, security, privacy, and freedom. Facebook flagged Linux topics as cybersecurity threads, and then came across an article which says Facebook admitted that the topic crackdown was in error and it has been fixed. I don't use Facebook, so I can't make any informed judgment. Bob, do you have a comment on this?
I only to say that there appears to have been in their algorithms something that was flagging the hashtag. And as we all know, the hashtag is also the comment symbol in Linux code. And I am very suspicious that where there were lengthy strings following that comment tag, these were interpreted as hashtags. And lengthy strings after a hashtag is usually a sign of spam. And it's been used by Facebook for years to screen out spam. And so you get into some problems. And I suspect they were trying to figure out now, how do we actually continue to keep the spam out with the hashtag spam and still allow code with comments? And in the meantime, they managed to so tick off one of the DistroWatch that DistroWatch basically withdrew from Facebook.
Intriguing.
And there may have been other things about Linux topics that got flagged and they should not have been. I'm not entirely clear exactly why. And
Yeah,
they did not. Go ahead.
They're attempting to moderate a huge community with limited per user income. So it's sort of amazing that they're only half bad at it.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Is your son obsessed with Linux? That's kind of an interesting thing. What did you come across with that one, Bob?
Oh, this was something that was in the comments. It's an oldie but a goodie. And there's a link to something in the early 20 aughts, which was meant to be a parody. And it was all these signs that your son may be a hacker. And it included this mention of the Linux operating system. Clearly, this was aimed at people who already knew that some parents thought that things were going on and they had heard maybe in certain organizational settings that this, that, or the other thing was bad and evil. And it's like that old game of telephone where they keep getting the names wrong. But the comments took the article seriously. And people were actually scared that Linux might get banned. And it's come around again now to where some things that have been said by governments, including our own, about open source, indicated maybe it was going to be restricted or banned some places. And that encryption itself might be restricted or banned. Our own FBI has said things about that. So it is serious, but this thing is just a huge parody, and it's just funny. Not only reading the opinion piece, the fake opinion piece, but reading how serious people got in the comments. It was amusing, but at the same time, scary.
And we go finally to our topic on artificial intelligence and loose language models. Excuse me, large language models.
you were right the first time.
He speaks truth when he fumbles. Yes, new Chinese AI engine, something called DeepSeek, has challenged OpenAI for somewhat less than was spent on developing the AI on which we largely depend here in the West. We're far west of Boston, so I guess we count as the West. DeepSeek might not be as destructive as was claimed in the early articles, but I think it's causing a lot of turmoil. There was something that said the AI funding resources, all the investments were suddenly dropped off the side of a cliff based on this information that's coming out. And maybe that is by itself enough disruption for the Chinese to be happy. DeepSeek can actually be run in a reduced format on Raspberry Pi computers, which are the tiny playing card deck sized computers. I have not tried it. I own a Raspberry Pi, but not enough interested in artificial intelligence to try to do that. It was said in that article by the YouTube video by Jeff Geerling, who is a good gearhead for Linux in hardware. He said it runs slow, so you couldn't do it as a live server, but it does run. And it's kind of interesting to know that the resources will get better on small computers. So in some future, it might be possible to run a really useful artificial intelligence, if there is such a thing, on
And,
a tiny.
and the hardware it takes to run a real instance of it is rather more affordable than what it takes to run an open AI instance. it's four figures in dollars, but it's mid four figures as opposed to five or six. And so it's cheaper to run, even at the speed at what it'd be for a private interactive server. Um, the amusing thing is OpenAI, which says that their academic fair use scraping of everybody's web pages and copyright content is perfectly fair, even though they're putting it in a commercial product because they slapped open on the front of the name, are complaining that they think the way DeepSeek trained theirs for less was swiping something in OpenAI's training as a bootstrap. And the irony there is hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
Take a look at yourself, guy. What you're doing, actual explanation ability, as opposed to hallucinating an explanation that continues the conversation. If that's the case, and I say if with emphasis, that would be a major step forward. One of my several complaints with the ChatGPT OpenAI family of large hallucinatory language modules is their lack of auditable explanatory facilities, and that's not new with neural net type models, non-large, focused deep learning or neural net models that you show them all of the resumes that you've looked at in the last decade and indicate which ones you offered, which ones you hired, and which ones you didn't. Learn that you don't give offers to people with names that sound ethnic, and will reproduce the discriminatory behavior that the humans had before. But they intentionally don't have any explanatory facility because that would cost extra and would prove that it's discriminating. So they don't put that in. When you have plagiarized the entire internet, you don't want to put in an explanatory function that would cost extra because it would prove that you're plagiarizing. So they don't have it. So I would like to see a demonstration that DeepSeek has actual explanatory ability as opposed to ChatGPT, OpenAI, Copilot, etc., which will hallucinate footnotes to frequently to non-existent documents. But for 70 years, we've been overselling the current capabilities of so-called artificial intelligence, and it balloons up and collapses. It's been cyclic. When I was involved in the fringes of it and made a study of the different kinds available, expert systems that were handcrafted were auditable and traceable and expensive. Cost less than doing the same thing other ways, but made a more maintainable system to order your vax, but was not the cheap, just pour data in the hopper and let the machine think magic that they sell machine learning as.
Yeah, one way that the LLMs show their weakness is if you take them through a complex process. For example, getting a passport and the passport rules in the US versus the Bahamas. I know of somebody who tried to do this. If you're just planning a trip to the Bahamas, it does okay. But if you're trying to work through the rules and say, what do I need to do? This complication happened. I caught COVID. Now what do I do? What changes do I need to make? It almost always gets it wrong.
Yeah,
Because,
it's
yeah,
it
it can't
doesn't
follow
have.
the logic.
Yeah, I mean, it can't follow logic. It's weak on numbers. Um, you know, mixing arithmetic with logic was difficult 40 years ago.
Yeah,
I didn't call the system I built as a prototype demo for the government artificial intelligence. I called it artificial ignorance because it was a artificial bureaucrat.
yeah,
Uh, but the risk analysis protocol was designed to be simple enough a second lieutenant or ensign could do it.
yeah,
So it involved arithmetic. Um, and getting a logic language to handle the arithmetic as well as truth and falsity was tricky. You
yeah,
can do it. Um, the theoretical underpinnings of mathematics involve symbolic addition if you get into the meta-mathematics, but nobody actually does mathematics that way. That's just how we prove that mathematics is well-founded, and then we set it aside.
hmm
So it's
yeah. I
which is why you look for six fingers or or three fingers as the clue that an image is generative AI of the visual sort, and why asking how many R's are in strawberry is a tell. I've heard that DeepSeek actually understands there are three R's in strawberry.
yeah. There have been incremental improvements, but the main problem still seems to be if information is nested one inside another, one thing follows from another. That's
Yeah.
what it can't find.
Well, I mean, frankly, there are an awful lot of supposed high school graduates that have difficulty with that also.
That is true.
But
Many college graduates as well.
one would hope not, but
There are some. Okay. Well, anyway, very interesting stuff.
Absolutely. And as we have just passed 5 o'clock, I don't want to hold ourselves too much longer, but Jill has maybe a final comment.
Actually, it's Dick.
Okay.
We mentioned at the beginning, or near the beginning, the millermicro.com line that brings you into our info on computer issues, including FOSS. As of now, the first item in the list is the one I already discussed. The second item on the list has horizontal lines holding, I think, 3 or 4 articles into one lump. They're all about this, and I think they have some real concerns, along with some fake ones. So take a look.
What's the search? Which line is it? What's it called?
If you just go to our Algot had it. I'm sure it'll be going out with the agenda. I'll send it to you, Algot, to make sure.
Thank you. Okay, Jerry?
I just would like to mention that at the BLU, we have a meeting dedicated to DeepSeek, I think in March. I'm not 100% sure. That would be Brian DeLacy, Kurt Keppel, and maybe a third guy on that.
and I'll be sniping from the peanut gallery.
As you always do.
Mhm.
Which brings me to mention that our next meeting is the first Thursday of March. That will be the 6th, as it was this month. So with the time having gotten beyond us a little bit and the topics reasonably well covered, I'll do my best to put forward those things we didn't cover in any significant way. And if I miss anything, I'm sure that those things will be mentioned to me as we develop the upcoming month's agenda. Don't forget to be part of the Discuss mailing list and send your suggestions, comments, complaints through that. Jerry?
Yeah, I just heard from the data center people. We'll be meeting them around noon tomorrow.
Excellent news.
So hopefully we'll be back up by tomorrow.
Sounds great, because that means I don't need to rush to get this already published.
Right.
Oh, my friends, I thank you for being part of today's meeting, and I hope that you have an excellent day without any snow shoveling. Ours here is about only an inch, and we only have to worry about what happens on the weekend and next Wednesday and then the Saturday after that. And
Well, I'm at least going to have to sweep the sidewalk and lay down some more salt.
might be
And
enough.
if I want apples and medicine refill, I need to brush off the car too.
Good luck.
You
Don't
can
slip.
ignore it. It's just a snow job.
Yeah.
Thank
Try
you.
it.
Rob.
That's
Thank
good
you
stuff.
all for being part of my good day.
Okay. Well, thanks for a great meeting, everybody.